Okay, according to this, I am live. I could technically check perhaps LinkedIn or YouTube because that's where we are beaming here today. I have the ability to check out comments, or if I'm just talking to myself for a little bit and dressed like a goofball, that's perfectly fine. Happy St. Patrick's Day. This is Tim Sarantonio of the Generosity Spectrum, and I am excited to give this live preview of the Generosity Roundtable experience that I'm going to be running live. A lot of word live today on tomorrow at 1 p.m. And I'm going to be joined by Julia Campbell of just amazing nonprofit leader when it comes to social media and marketing and so many amazing things. What a great collaborator. But also Ben Williams, the executive director of the Connect Center that I am also partnering with because of the fiscal sponsored project that this is actually helping bring alive. Because it's not just a game that we're going to be talking about tomorrow, but a different way to think about learning overall. So I'm going to give a little bit of kind of a background for anybody who might not know who I am, and then I'm really going to use this time to answer any questions that people have. And in lieu of that, no matter what, I'm going to walk us through kind of how things came about. So I have been in the nonprofit sector since 2008. I got my start as a grant writer for a small day labor rights organization operating mainly in the south side of Chicago. And so that was a really informative experience because, one, it was a recession, and I have kind of joked that you haven't really properly lived as a nonprofit fundraiser unless you've gone through some sort of traumatic event. Well, guess what? We have a lot of those lately. And that kind of leads into why this exists, because I worked for a bunch of different nonprofits. I was kind of overseeing volunteers. I did a lot of event planning. I did database management. I helped design the beginnings of legacy giving programs and as well as recurring giving programs. And then I also worked for a technology company in the nonprofit sector for about 14 years and helped facilitate billions of dollars in generosity in the financial form. But through the work of especially the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which I am currently chair of, you can check that out at fepreports.org. And it is one of the most valuable resources that we have in our sector, because what that does is it provides benchmarks for overall transactional giving, individual giving specifically. So this is giving us insight into if people are giving certain times of the year, or are they coming back and supporting the same organization year over year, otherwise known as retention, right? These are critical questions. I also serve on the board of my local community foundation, and we were having these discussions yesterday in terms of making sure that people feel welcome to kind of walk into the space that you're building, as well as continue to stay in that space. And that is where the Generosity Spectrum was ultimately born, is that I feel like we need to reclaim the spaces where we can practice generosity and build our identities from that. One of the most important investments that I made in myself was taking the Certificate of Philanthropic Psychology course from the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy under Jen Shang. And that changed my life in a lot of different ways, but it mainly helped rewire how I think about all of this. Because throughout this process, I have been talking about the identity crisis that I feel that the nonprofit sector is going through. And in many ways, this extends out into civic society. When I talk about generosity, I'm not talking about money. I am not talking about volunteering. I'm not talking about advocating. I'm talking about the inherent understanding of who we are as human beings, because I feel we are inherently generous people. I learned this on St. Patrick's Day many years ago in Ireland, actually, because when I moved there for before I started my stint in the nonprofit sector and things like that, I lived in Ireland for a year. I was getting a degree on culture and colonialism. Helped me get coffee shop jobs when I moved to Chicago. So hence I needed to go get a real job. That's why I got the nonprofit sector thing. So you back that up a little bit. I'm in Ireland. My student loans don't come in. My people in the program, people that I lived with, they opened up their homes. They opened up their kitchens for me to be able to sit down and feel comfortable and welcome. And that was beautiful. That was a beautiful process. So this is all to say that there's a lot swirling around up here that goes into what created what I'm going to show you today. Because I spent about 5 minutes kind of talking about the landscape and a little bit about me, but ultimately this comes down to, I feel like we need to get these spaces back where we learn who we are. If you're working in the nonprofit sector, this is for you. If you're a board member, this is for you. If you're a volunteer, this is for you. If you've ever given to a nonprofit, this is for you. If you've ever done a small favor for somebody, went to a potluck, gave some advice to somebody without asking for transactions back and forth, this is for you. The Generosity Roundtable is inherently based in goodness, in understanding that the things that are most beautiful in life don't come from hatred, don't come from division, but come from love. That's why I created this game, because I want people to fall in love with the nonprofit sector again. I want them to fall in love with the idea of generosity. It's not cool, right? We're hearing about the giving pledge and billionaire philanthropy and how people like Peter Thiel are turning people off from, oh, well, that's not how you actually change the world. Just invest in businesses and impacts and things like that. The reality is that nonprofit professionals make the world go round every single day. We see that time and time again. 10% of the entire workforce is based just in the nonprofit sector for the United States alone. And this pattern replicates itself in different ways across different countries and things like that. But I know U.S. nonprofits the most. That's where I've lived. That's who I've partnered with for this, because everything that you're going to see here is being developed as a philanthropic initiative as its grounding point. While I have an LLC, that's to make some of the other conversations I'm having a little bit cleaner. But my partner, Ben Williams at the Connect Center, and I are focused on building that philanthropic space first to make sure that we can bring things like this to come alive, right? Costs money to have the nice version where I can actually show you, things on the screen. So let's actually kind of get into that, because I have a little sheet here on the character profile, because ultimately what I have designed is a conversational role-playing game for people to walk through difficult conversations with each other. So when we are starting, you're starting with the inherent understanding that you make decisions as a human being when it comes to generosity in specific types of ways. This is what philanthropic psychology teaches us, that people don't just give because they love something. They love it for different reasons, and they're motivated for different reasons. So if you've ever played something like Dungeons and Dragons, you know that you have to start with your character. So I'm going to work with Julia Campbell a little bit later today on her character. She sent me a sheet that I'm going to get into that looks exactly like the one that you see right here. In fact, I want to be able, let's see if I can move this over. Yeah, see, so when I point this way, now it's going to be on this side. Isn't that nice? So generally, when we're looking at the kind of the character sheet, you have obviously the name and stuff like that. So this is an example from a St. Louis game that I ran in February in partnership with Rachel D'Souza of Gladiator Consulting. She, opened up again, generosity. It's not just the money, right? It's the space, it's the time, it's the talent. And so she brought together this amazing group of people, and some of them shared their character sheets with me afterwards. So you could kind of see that people can, put things down to kind of inhibit the character. You don't have to play as yourself. Right? So when we're going to go through the game, somebody can play as a board member, they can play as a donor, they could play as themselves. And so the place that this comes alive is going to be for tomorrow, the Generosity Roundtable. And so here is the virtual tabletop that I've built to showcase the game. And so this is fun because we're trying to take learning in the nonprofit sector and flip it on its head. A lot of times you're sitting there and you're kind of like this, right? It's a very, singular, I'm talking at you type of situation. And the reality is that people should be talking with each other around these problems. There's only so many times that we want to hear from a so-called expert. You're the expert in your generosity, your community's generosity. You are the expert. You have that power. You have that understanding. You don't need somebody like me telling you what to do. You have to figure that out yourself because you're ultimately accountable for those. Right? Kind of one of the things that I live by is that, yes, there's definitely the idea of mutual aid, but there's also mutual responsibility. If we make an agreement with each other, it needs to be reciprocal. And so what's cool about how the game is created is you see that character sheet. So we're going to load the ones that our players are providing me, or maybe I'll be providing them that. And then we're going to actually, be able to go through the cards here. So if somebody like the last person that we looked at, right, let's kind of take a look at that again. This is a steward, right? So that's actually mapped over. Let me get me back. Okay. So yeah, these are actually mapped to the cards that we have here. I could even shuffle the cards, and we're going to do that tomorrow. So let's see if I can get to the steward just randomly. I'm lazy. I'm lazy today. There we go. So the steward, people trust you to look after what already exists. You carry memory, relationships, and institutional knowledge forward. You're often asked whether something is worth sustaining. And the connection that you have with the cause is that you identify continuity and care over time, and you fear change that breaks trust faster than it builds it. So this can get integrated into a character sheet. We're going to see some of those tomorrow from our players. And so let me actually pop that asset up if you want to register for that event. I'm going to keep that QR code up during this time. And so you'll be able to see this type of experience. And so the way that the game works is that you have your characters. So maybe you have your steward, you have an ambassador, right? We're going to have two people playing tomorrow, Ben and Julia. And then they're going to go through a scenario with a dedicated outcome. Understood, right? So in this case, this would be like I'm having a tech issue. Maybe you're having trouble implementing your CRM. Maybe you're trying to make a decision on what technology that you want to implement, and you're trying to get alignment around that. Think about any situation, any scenario that you might have as a nonprofit professional, as a board member, as a volunteer, as a donor. This is what the game is designed to be able to discuss. You gather around the table, right? You might have two people gathered around with a host as the third. You always need 3 people at the minimum for the game. Just like Dungeons and Dragons, ideally the mechanic is, with 6 people or something like that. But I play with 10, right? What I showed you before with that other character sheet, that game had 10 people. And so basically what you do is you take your understood scenario, you pair that with a conversation card. It's not just alignment, but I also have boundaries and actions. Technically, I've come up with 4 other types here, but we're only going to start with 3. Same with the archetypes. I have 15 more of these right in the hopper here. Scenarios I'm actually pretty good on. I've had a few people suggest some scenarios beyond what I have here. But when the game launches at AFPICon, and I'm going to show a little bit of fun design elements kind of at the tail end of this. I see one person, at least, by the way, if you are here. Feel free to comment to make sure that you know that I'm not dressed like an idiot for no reason. But kind of the way that the game works, by the way, is that you gather around the table and you, as the 2 or 3 or etc. people, are going to have a conversation. And the host's job is to keep it civil, keep it consensus-based, because you are supposed to agree. You're supposed to agree with the other people at the table on how to approach the scenario, with the understanding that you're going to have a dedicated outcome, in this case, alignment. Tomorrow we're playing the alignment mode. It's probably the most popular one. And so what you do is you take 3 of these tactics cards, and this is the beauty of the game. If you're thinking, well, I don't necessarily need these things. This is where expansion packs can come into play. This is where I can work with different partners, either at a foundation or a technology company, or, a volunteer network or whatever. And we could discuss, what do we want people to address? And so, look, I've been doing this type of stuff and for 20 years, living the experience of trying to figure out technology, or trying to connect with people, or dealing with new boards, or dealing with people who don't agree with each other, or funding cuts, right? Like, I've lived through all of these things. So I put in the most common scenarios that people like you are probably dealing with here. But it doesn't mean we have to stop there. Things are going to change. What won't change is that you need to have this person and this person agree on what should happen here. And so what you do is you go through and say, if I'm having a technology issue and I am somebody who's fearful of being connected to efforts that contradict my values, right? The ambassador over here and the steward over here is somebody that is pretty fearful of like speed in a lot of different ways. Then what happens is that maybe I don't like the idea of publishing things in real time very quickly. So you talk it out. And what's been fascinating, because I've been watching people play this since December, in groups, individual games, all of this type of stuff. And at the end of the day, people negotiate. People want to find alignment, right? It's a consensus game. This is it. This is the whole shebang in terms of how it's going to work. You sit around a table and you discuss, how should I approach a problem? How should I solve a problem? So I'm pretty excited. So, I want to also outline that the majority of this we're going to see tomorrow. So I'm going to actually go ahead and kind of take this down. And what I'd love to do in this final part, and again, we're taping this on YouTube, we're taping this on LinkedIn, so people can take a look at this later on. And obviously we're going to do a deeper dive over here if you register. So what I'd love to do is give you a little bit of special preview. This is for people who bother to actually watch the live stream or watching live. You're going to see the very first reveal of the logo concept. I've been working with local artist PJ Engel for the past few weeks. He's been a joy to work with. And so what's really cool is that he's come up with this design, and the way that those icons are going to translate. This would be like the top of the card. So right now, here, I'll blow myself up right here. See, this is what it looks like. You saw it in the other thing too, right? Pretty boring. I was able to do this in Canva. But with what he's envisioning, it's kind of going to be right on top there, kind of this androgynous, genderless head. And then people can kind of put their own identity and ideas into it. That's where the character sheets kind of flesh it out, but you can simply build a character with reading a card and having the host ask you, does this remind you of anybody that you know? That's all it takes to get people into the game. That's it. That one question. You don't need the character sheets. You don't need anything other than that original idea. So what I'm going to run people through tomorrow, or if you want to comment, if you're watching this, for the advocate, right? The advocate, which we, may have saw a little bit earlier before, but right, these are people who identify with fairness and accountability and fear solutions that preserve harmful systems. I had a really interesting conversation earlier today with a CMO, and they observed something very interesting. I'm not going to actually say it now because it would influence your opinion on it, but I think that it's, well, I'll talk about it. It was balance. It was about the idea of balance and why they had a preference for option B. So I think that was pretty cool. And then the disruptor, as you could tell, a little bit more energy in it. So you identify with transformation and structural change, and you feel comfort that delays necessary action. They observed that maybe option B might be a little bit too chaotic, but maybe it's something that is going this way and then goes a different direction. So that's mainly what I wanted to do today. I might go have a zero after this. I'm wearing this goofy suit, but at the end of the day, what I'm gearing up for is to showcase a lot of really cool things for any of you who are interested in this initiative. I'm so thankful for all of my donors, the people who've already supported the project. Right. I want to thank every single one of them. They've done amazing, amazing things to make sure that, this can come alive. Right. Like, this is a philanthropic project. So these are things that at the end of the today, I can't do it without these people. So I do want to thank, my donors so far that have supported both organizations, have businesses like ClickBid and Better Unite, but there's people behind that, right? Like Leia and Matt are actual people. I've had conversations. They understand the vision. And so, they were very generous with what they have been able to do. Everybody's been so generous with their time, their talent, their treasure to just kind of talk about this. And so I want to thank these people. I actually need to add a few more folks. Uncle Bill, thank you, Uncle Bill, and Aunt Maureen for that support too. And so I know that there's so much more that we can do together philanthropically. So I can't wait to see where this goes. There's a lot of interest from learning networks and technology companies, and most importantly, fundraisers like you, nonprofit marketers, program people, volunteer people, grant people, board members. Just, this is for everybody, because this is us, right? We look in the mirror and we are generous people. This is who it's for. People who look at themselves and say, I want to do good today. I want to help. That's what I'm trying to do here, is help you get to that understanding that much quicker with your teams, with your neighbors, within your communities. I see beautiful things that we can do. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Please go ahead and register for this free experience, and I'll see you out there. Let's go. Happy St. Patrick's Day.